Hey everyone, I'm Super Buu Cosplay. This is part 3 of my Buu crafting vlog. In this video I'm going to show you how I made the teeth and sculpted the tongue and the lips and did all this work on Buu's face. So I cut out the inside of the mouth, but now I want to make a little, box inside of here so that I can sculpt like a tongue and add some teeth and more mouth detail. So I think to do that I'm going to start with the mouth section that I cut out. And I'm going to trace this onto some paper, and then I'll be able to draw out 4 sections that I can glue inside of it. Basically, I want to do a thicker piece of foam in there, like that, all the way around the mouth, and then put another piece of foam on the back of that to cover the whole thing. So then once it's all together, it'll be sort of like that. So there'll be some depth to the mouth, but then a wall at the back so that I can, put a tongue in there and sculpt some details and whatever. I don't want it to just be a void, because then I don't have anything to sculpt against, and then you'll see my face. That's going to be my rough pattern for the borders around the mouth. The pattern I made on paper just from the section I cut out wasn't lining up right on the inside because it was fitting to the outer curvature. So I put some masking tape in there and redrew it. Alright, now that I've got that glued on, I'm going to put a piece behind all of this to box in the mouth. Then I'll be able to sort of build off of that. So the inside, I cut this with a beveled edge, just to give a little bit more room for my nose and stuff in there. Alright, now that the mouth bits are glued in, I'm going to round over the edges of the mouth here with the Dremel, and then I might go in here and try to start carving in a lower lip a little bit. And once I've got all that Dremel, I'll probably do a little bit of sculpting with the foam clay. After some dremeling, I'm starting to get a little bit of lower lip shape. I think that's looking pretty good. I've got to make some teeth for Buu, so I covered his mouth in masking tape and drew them on. For these teeth, I'm going to start out with using 10mm foam. I don't think it needs to be that thick, but I'd rather have extra thickness to shape the teeth. I tend to think shapes like teeth are deceptively round. You need a decent amount of depth to get a good curve on them, otherwise they end up just looking flat on the front, and I don't think it ends up looking great. Once everything's cut out, I'm going to use that tapered Dremel bit that I enjoy so much and round over all these teeth. When holding tiny pieces of foam like this, you need to be careful that the Dremel doesn't grab it and fling it out of your hands. It can be a little bit difficult, but as long as you have a good grip on it, it should be fine. Maybe wear a face shield if you're not confident you'll be holding it tightly, because it could fling off the Dremel and hit you in the face. I was in the middle of dremeling these teeth, and the power went out for like an hour. What the heck? Anyway, power's back now. I want to keep dremeling this. I'll probably just put everything I've said just over a time lapse. You don't need to see the whole dremeling of the teeth. I wanted to make sure these teeth were symmetrical, so I ended up remeasuring and giving myself a little reference here that I could stick them in. There's the top teeth. I cut them in half because they were a bit too thick. For the bottom teeth, I might use the bit I cut off and just trim these down. These are glued together, by the way. I just glued the 4 chunks together. And these are going to need to be cut a little thinner this way as well, but it's easier to hold them like this. For these bottom teeth, I might just trim these down and reshape them a little. These seem to be about the height I might want anyway. So I kept the 2 front teeth together, just so I've got one hunk there. And then Dremel those, glue them back together, and see if that'll work for my bottom teeth. For these pointy tooth pieces, I'm going to line up the fronts of them when I glue them together. So this one's got a little bit more to trim off the back, but the fronts are aligned. So I know it's good. And then I'm going to do the same thing when I glue it to the row of teeth. And there's sort of how it'll look when it's glued into the mouth. There's the teeth. I have them pinned in place just so they weren't scooching around. I could kind of get the placement of them. You can see the bottom ones are curved. Top one's a little straighter, but still slightly curved. So I'm going to mark these out. I'm just going to mark basically in between each tooth where I want it to stick. And I think I'm going to glue these with super glue. Just so I have a little bit more wiggle room than contact cement. Because it's kind of hard to get in there for my fingers at least. Let's do the bottom first. I usually wear gloves when I super glue just because I'm not confident I won't super glue my fingers. I'm going to have the Instaset kicker ready. That way I don't have to hold this in place all day. Ooh, luckily, since I had this pinned in place overnight, it's already curving to the right direction. So, there's some super glue on there. I'm trying to make sure there's going to be enough that'll scooch out to the edges. And then just stick this in place. Alright, so now that I'm holding it where I want it, I'm going to spray it with the Instaset. The top of it I might go ahead and do in sections because it's a little longer. I don't want to mess it up. I'll just do those front two teeth first by themselves. Alright, so now that the center two teeth are glued down, I can kind of lift, if I can get my fingies in here, I can kind of lift up this tooth. There we go. Get some super glue in there, and then scooching back down. Paper towel to wipe off a little bit of the excess, and then I'll spritz it again. I got all these glued down. The two end teeth I'm going to glue together. Alright, so there's the teeth. I think they look okay. Now I'm going to sculpt a little bit of a top lip. I think I need to bring it out just like boop. Just a little bit. At the very least in line with this bottom lip. Alright, I've got the head on a styrofoam bust. And that's stuck onto a dowel that's in a piece of wood that has had a hole drilled in it. And that's just so I don't have to try to hold this while I'm sculpting on it. I'm gonna try to put the tongue in there first. Kind of what the tongue looks like on the figure. I don't think I said before, I'm gonna be using foam clay for this. So I've got a bowl of water here. I'm just gonna grab kind of a handful of clay. That's probably more than I need. And I have these little silicone tipped brush thingies. I'll use those to kind of shape it. I'm gonna knead the foam clay a little bit. This is what I've seen recommended for using it to give it a little bit more elasticity so it doesn't just like break super easy. And once it seems pretty stretchy, to get it to stick to the foam, you need to rub some water on it. I'm going to use a little silicone tip tool. Get a little bit of clay and poke it in and start shaping with the tools. I have this one that's got like a little scoop out of it that'll help getting that rounded tongue shape. I want to make sure this isn't looking like it's blending into the teeth. I want it to go behind the teeth. Making sure to dip my tools in water relatively often, that way it's not super sticky on the clay. Alright, so there's my attempt at a tongue for now. I'm going to keep poking away at it probably. Alright, the tongue has been drying overnight. Now I'm going to do the upper lip. I'm just starting out by adding some mask to the upper lip and tapering it out to the edges. I also want it to kind of have like a triangular shape, giving kind of the implication of a nose without making a nose. Silicone tip tools and start trying to blend this a little better. So I've got the lips and the tongue and a little bit on the temple leading up from the eyebrow sculpted with the foam clay. I've let it dry for a couple days. I think I did 3 days just to make sure everything was dry. Now I'm going to use a combination of Dremel bits and sandpaper and smooth all this out and get it looking nice. I started to do it a little bit on the temple here already so you can kind of see comparison there. This one's nice and angled. This one's a little bit lumpy. Some of the smaller sections like in here have this really tiny bit. I might not do a ton in on the tongue because tongues can probably be a little lumpy anyway. But definitely all the edges where it meets with the foam here, I want that to blend in nicely. And then any sort of lumps that I didn't get out when sculpting, I want to make sure those are gone as well, like this. There's Boo after everything's been sanded. I'm pretty happy with how it came out overall. I think it's looking pretty good. And that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing. If you'd like to see more of my work, follow me on social media. I'll have links to everything down below, and I'll see you next time. What do you see?